Audrina, Mr. Harrison asked me to remind you that this company isn't a revolving door. Since you've decided to leave, don't even think about coming back, she said coldly. Oh, and one more thing. He said he doesn't have time for your little games. He won't bother trying to win you back, no matter how loyal you've been. The company doesn't need you to make money. I responded with a simple acknowledgement and hung up. This company had been my life's work for 10 years. From a team of 10 to a corporation with thousands of employees, the journey had been grueling. Because Lennon was allergic to alcohol, I took on all the social engagements. Day and night, I drank, built connections, and secured investments. After finally landing the funding that launched the company, I ended up in the ER with acute gastric bleeding from excessive drinking. When Lennon found out, he held me and cried his heart out. Audrina, I'd rather lose this company than lose you, he'd said back then. Remembering those words, I hung up the phone, packed my things, and went home. But as soon as I got out of the car, my phone buzzed with messages from a workgroup chat. Betty had sent 3 photos of her and Lennon looking intimate, only to delete them immediately. She tagged me and wrote, Audrina, I'm so sorry. Mr. Harrison and I were playing Truth or Dare earlier. I accidentally sent these here instead of to a private chat. Some of Lennon's friends chimed in to smooth things over. Audrina, Betty's just young and clueless. Don't take it to heart. Exactly. We're all here with Lennon now. It was just a joke. You know how Lennon is. He can't even handle one beer. Audrina, don't overthink it. This group had been formed back when the company first started. This group was established when our company was just starting up, with all the founding team members. Back then, we were all fresh graduates, busy nonstop. But Lennon always found ways to have fun. He'd post countless pictures of me in the group, me dozing off on his shoulder, me buried in work at my desk. Everyone knew about our relationship and teased us often. Lennon, you better cherish her. A girl willing to stick with you through hard times is one in a million. Exactly. Hurry up and marry her already. We're all waiting for the wedding. Lennon had laughed along, promising he would marry me someday. But everything changed when he hired Betty as his secretary and added her to the group. Their growing closeness didn't go unnoticed. Eventually, they created a separate chat without me in it. I wouldn't have known about it if Betty hadn't wanted me to. 3 months ago, right after Lennon and I got engaged, she sent me a screenshot. In it, Lennon was venting to his friends. I only got engaged to Audrina because I feel responsible for what happened to her. I don't love her. I could only laugh bitterly. Ignoring the endless barrage of messages, I left the group and blocked them all. When I got home, the custom wedding dress I had ordered had just been delivered. Looking at the long train of the gown I had dreamed of for so long, memories of the past decade flooded my mind. Back when Lennon was broke, he had stood with me outside a bridal boutique, fantasizing about the future. He'd promised there would be a home, children, and a beautiful life. With tears in his eyes, he'd gazed at the newlyweds inside and sworn he'd work hard so he could give me the most stunning dress in the world. But those golden days were as fleeting as fireworks. I took out a lighter, igniting the gown and burying the last traces of the man I'd fallen in love with and the person I had once been. When Lennon came home, he found me standing before the burning dress. His face turned ashen. He rushed over, shoving me aside in an attempt to save it. But the growing flames made him falter. Frantic, he fetched a bucket of water and doused the fire. However, the once pristine gown was already in tatters. He rounded on me, his voice thunderous. Audrina, are you crazy? The wedding is a month away. What are you planning to wear now? I tried to get up from the ground but struggled with my new prosthetic leg. The scorched wedding dress lay before me, but I felt even more broken than it was. It's fine. I just noticed it was defective. I couldn't wear it anyway, I said lightly. Lennon noticed my struggle and seemed to realize he had gone too far. He sighed deeply and helped me to my feet. I'm sorry, darling. I was just too anxious. Wasn't this your dream dress? We waited half a year for it. Even if it was defective, you could have waited for me to come home. We could have had it fixed. I shrugged off his hand. The man before me was no longer the boy who once wanted to give me the world. Did you forget? I went through every fitting and alteration alone. You were too busy. Don't let me waste your time now. He opened his mouth but had no retort. His guilt flickered across his face. I just coldly watched, observing how he pretended to be so affectionate towards me out of so-called responsibility. As if he remembered something, he pulled me into his arms. The cloying scent of fig perfume instantly enveloped me. Are you upset about Betty's photos? It was just a misunderstanding. I admit I haven't been considerate lately. Once I'm less busy, I'll take you to pick a new dress. I promised you the most beautiful one, didn't I? Once, I might have forgiven him, blinded by his promises. But disappointment had long since drained my feelings for him. The way he repeatedly exploited my pain, abandoning me in the middle of nowhere late at night. I couldn't keep deceiving myself. I stood tall, and a single question still lingered stubbornly in my mind. I pushed him away and asked plainly, Lennon, do you truly want to marry me? Forget responsibility or anyone else. Just answer me honestly. Perhaps humans were naturally drawn to self-inflicted torment. Even though I had no illusions left, I wanted closure. I wanted to ask one final answer for the 10 years I had given him. As he looked at my serious and open expression, a flicker of panic crossed his eyes. It felt like there was an invisible barrier between us, something I couldn't quite grasp. His hesitation was brief, and then he nodded as if trying to convince himself. I smiled bitterly. Lennon, I don't need a grand wedding. Tomorrow, meet me at the courthouse. I'll be waiting for you there. He looked stunned, but before he could respond, his phone rang. Glancing at the screen, he grew flustered. Darling, something came up at work. Don't worry. I'll see you tomorrow. He shielded the phone from my view, but I already knew it was Betty. She was the only one he called baby. I said nothing. The next morning, I arrived at the courthouse early and waited all day. By 5 o'clock, Lennon still hadn't shown up. Instead, I saw a tweet from Betty. I am so grateful my dear boss came to take care of me in the hospital. Truly touched. The photo showed her lying on a bed, bandaged and frail. By her side, Lennon looked utterly distraught. I liked the post. Moments later, it was deleted. Lennon called immediately. His voice was full of accusations. What did you say to Betty? Do you know she tried to kill herself because of your constant misunderstandings? She was at death's door, and yet you're cold-hearted enough to play tricks to upset her. He didn't give me a chance to respond, hanging up before I could say a word. By then, the once bustling hall was empty. The lively chatter had faded, leaving only me waiting alone. The loneliness was suffocating, and I couldn't help but regret my naive persistence. Still, I refused to leave. Several staff members passed by, glancing at me curiously. Eventually, one approached with concern. Miss, are you still waiting for someone? If they can't make it, maybe it's time to. Before they could finish, hurried footsteps echoed from behind me. It was Aaron. He rushed toward me, smelling of sandalwood, and pulled me into a warm embrace. Sorry, my flight was delayed. Is it still okay to register? He asked breathlessly. I smiled and nodded. When we finally held the marriage certificate, I grabbed my suitcase and left with Aaron without looking back. On the way to the airport, I sent Lennon one last message. Goodbye, for good. I used this simple farewell, closing the chapter of a decade-long entanglement. But just before takeoff, Lennon called, desperately trying to reach me.